26th of April, block number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant explodes, a disaster for which even professionals could not find a proper explanation. It was more than a worst-case scenario. Chernobyl meant super disaster.
Just like always, the performance of the reactor was reduced. I didn't know about any experiments or security checks. I did my job that night, just as always, and everything seemed normal.
But the experiment went wrong. The personnel made a fatal mistake, and the performance of the reactor decreased too much and too fast. But they still continued, according to plan.
It could be explained by our mentality, duty at all costs. This meant, instead of stopping the reactor, they continued in order to finish off the experiment they had planned for that night.
The test became uncontrollable. As soon as they wanted to switch off the reactor, it was impossible to reverse. Instead of switching off, it became hotter and hotter.
At 4 seconds past 1:23 a.m., the actual experiment began. At 40 seconds past 1:23 a.m., the decision was made that the experiment should be cut and the reactor should be stopped immediately. After giving out the command to press the power-off button, 3 full seconds passed until the explosion. I didn't understand what was happening. I was in a state, thinking that I was in a different world. This just couldn't happen to me. Then I packed my stuff with the thought that I'm still alive and everything is okay. Then I heard the screaming of my colleagues.
The power of the 2 explosions blew the roof off Block 4, which weighed more than 1,000 tons. The reactor spat radiating debris.
It was a bad sign, a signal from the next century, a warning that we had to change our relationship with technology.
The radioactive cloud rose over the neighboring city of Pripyat. These amateur films were made on the day of the explosion. The radiation appeared on the film material as lightning strikes. Only security forces are notified and protected. The population has no idea of the disaster. Danger is invisible, intangible. That Saturday, everybody was walking like always on the streets. We have a little river where you can row. We were sitting almost the whole day in boats. A lot of women and a 16-year-old girl, too. It was very nice weather. The Soviet Union played dead. First, highly increased radioactivity was measured in a Swedish nuclear power plant. The indicators showed that the measured data could not come from their own reactor. The danger was coming from the east. No information in Western Europe for days.
Until today, the Soviet Union has not fulfilled the demands of European governments to publish exact data about the disaster.
Only 3 days later, the first hectic arrangements were being made. The authorities evacuated the neighboring Pripyat, making it a complete ghost town. What can you take in one suitcase? It was 1 suitcase and 3 children. I packed for the children, that was all. I went away in a jacket and house slippers, just as I was. There was no time to change. The hopeless struggle begins in Chernobyl. They tried to close the reactor with helicopters. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were supposed to wash radiation from cars and houses. The most dangerous place was the roof of the reactor. The cleaning robots didn't work because of the radiation, so people were being used.
Никто, ни меня, ни моих коллег не вынуждал это делать.
Nobody was enthusiastic about doing this, but this was our profession, and we knew there was no other choice. For many years, these people whom I sent to death appeared in my dreams. There were 5,000 of them.
А послал я на смерть 5000 человек.
The men had exact instructions. A camera followed them during the whole action. Each could stay only 45 seconds in the radiating hell.
Представьте, ребята
Just imagine that the guys started to dig, and at one point they found a container including heater elements. Of course, they got a huge dose of radiation. Well, it wasn't exactly a macaroni factory. Unfortunately, these kind of things happened. That's the way it
там
is.
по-другому и не могло быть.
Construction of the sarcophagus began. A huge shield, made from concrete and steel, was to protect radioactive block number 4. The first victims died at Special Hospital number 6 in Moscow. The most imperiled people were the firemen, who got the heaviest amount of radiation. They were transported here. Only a few of them survived, like Oleg Genrich.
After around 9 days, our skin started to turn red on our arms and legs. Our hair started to fall out. If we could get up, we could also walk. But then, very soon, we couldn't even get up. In the end, we had to be fed. This was the worst, the helplessness and the pain. Great pain.
The world demanded an explanation from the Soviet Union for the disaster. A report is written in the Kurchatov Institute in Moscow, but it was far from the truth.
The final report was phrased to show a picture to the world which blamed those working during that shift, but in a way which emphasized that there was no problem with the technical equipment.
To prove this, the Soviet leadership switched on the intact reactor blocks and connected them to the electric network. They confessed the dangerous structural failures only after 4 years.
The security system of the reactor, which should have slowed down the process, was built unfortunately so that under certain conditions the brakes acted as accelerator pedals. So when they wanted to switch off the reactor and stepped on the brake, they opened the throttle and the reactor blew up.
The sarcophagus was almost closed by November 1986. Volunteers hoist a red flag onto the dangerously contaminated tower, a cynical victory. But the horrible legacy of the disaster could not be hidden behind any propaganda.
Chernobyl proved for the first time that secrecy no longer worked in the Soviet Union. This was actually glasnost, the beginning of the politics of information, which was started by Gorbachev, and its consequences are known by all of us up to the demolition of the Berlin Wall.
The children of Chernobyl, they live and die with its consequences.